Hello, welcome to My Addiction. This is our podcast about all things addictive, good and bad.
Really, all things.
Yep. I'm Megan Weaver, and this is my sister,
Marti and Here's my mug. I put the.
She had mugs made and put the logo.
But I put the logo there instead of there, so I'm going to drink like this for you.
On the wrong side.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway. So we have a friend of yours coming on today.
We do. We have Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman, who was on, who's been on many things, many people. Actor, model, soon-to-be author, all these things. And also, as Lily really loves to point out, host of Drag Race Canada Season 1, which was one of her favorite seasons.
And then wasn't he a guest judge on RuPaul's Drag Race?
Yeah, you've seen him on RuPaul's Drag Race a lot.
And he was on a show of yours.
He was on Unreal.
Unreal, yes.
And that's how I got to know him. But so he's here. He is tremendous, and I have a feeling we're gonna have a lot to say. So I'm
excited. Let's get into it.
Jump right into it.
Let's bring him on.
All right. So here we are with Jeffrey.
Hi.
Oh my gosh. I'm just so happy that you're here.
It is an absolute dream come true to be sitting here with you, Marti. As you know this, I'm just such a huge fan personally, professionally. The 15-year-old version of me is just freaking out inside knowing that I'm sitting here in Beverly Hills having a conversation with Marti Noxon,
oh, well, get out of here. Yeah. Quick sidebar, I brought my daughter into casting because it was like a day when she wasn't in school, and she was sitting there, and when you auditioned for Unreal after you left, she said, "You've got to cast him. You've got to cast him."
Oh.
She was like 13, and I said, "No." I said 100%. So she just.
What is her name?
Her name is Lane.
Hi, Lane. Thank you for changing my life. Wow.
No, she was like, I was like, yeah, you just got to see it happen. Like when someone comes in and just.
Who did you play on Unreal?
Okay, so I played a producer named Jay Bartholomew Carter. That was eventually his full name, which are my initials, JBC, Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman. But in the original pilot, I don't think a lot of people know this. We shot an original pilot for Unreal.
And scrapped the whole thing.
It
was a nightmare.
Oh wow!
It is. It's a nightmare. It's a whole story. So that character that I originally auditioned for and booked was wildly different than the version that I ended up ultimately playing on the series. But very long story, very short. I had been living in New York. I'd been modeling for years, had been acting, had just done this pilot for NBC produced by Charlize Theron called Hatfields and McCoys, and it was and it was like pegged to be the hottest new pilot of the season, and everybody was so stoked on it, and then it didn't get picked up.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. It was my first time being there, and I was devastated when it didn't get picked up, and so much so that I got to the point where I just said to my team, like, please don't. I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it just gets so devastating and so heartbreaking after a period of time of getting so close, and like living in this fantasy world of what your life can be, because everybody's feeding into it, and then all of a sudden it's just like just the rug is just pulled out from under your feet with no notice, no remorse, and it's just, and then you're just expected to get up and do it again and again and again, and after a period of years, it's like, I don't know if I'm built for this anymore. It's a grind. So I had told my team at that time, like, please, I'm queer, obviously. I told them, please don't send me any material, any scripts, unless it's queer characters and it's somebody who I feel like I really fall in love with, because if I'm going to do it, I just want it to be worth it. And so months and months went by, and they sent me an email saying, we're sending you a script attached to a short film called Sequin Rays. And the character's not queer, but this writing is phenomenal, and it's so weird, and we think that you would really like it, and the creator is Marti Noxon. And I was like, done. Sold. And Sarah Gertrude Shapiro, who I wasn't familiar with at the time.
But mostly me. No, I'm kidding.
Well, that goes back to
mostly me.
It goes back to the top of this conversation where I was this young queer kid growing up in the middle of nowhere in Canada, obsessed with Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I never missed an episode. Obsessed.
Yeah.
And for
minus the queer and Canadian.
Right. But aside from that,
just give yourself time.
Same person. Yeah, exactly.
I shall.
Yeah.
I'll take both of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But at that time, I was so I really had no reference for Hollywood or for acting or for. I knew that it was a direction that I wanted to go in, but I had no idea how I was going to get there.
Yeah.
No clue whatsoever. And you were one of my first and biggest manifestations because for whatever reason, at 14 years old, I would be sitting in front of the television, and when the credits would roll, and it's an executive producer Marti and supervising producer, then executive producer, and then, I would point to the TV and say, "I'm going to work with you one day."
No, you did.
I've
I
got
don't
the
think I've
chills.
ever told you this before.
Serious
Well,
chills.
that's another thing is you have some elevated abilities.
Well, we all do, but it's a matter of paying attention.
Yours
and
yours are pretty.
Mine are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
very cool.
So for whatever reason, once again, I would just point to the TV screen and say, "I'm going to work with you one day," and I never knew how or when or why. And so when that happened, when my team reached out to me and said, and they knew this, my agents were well aware of this, and when they sent me the script and they said it's created by Marti and I said absolutely. So I was living in New York, but happened to be out here.
Yeah.
Went in and read for it a couple of times, actually.
Yeah.
And the character was straight. The character was like this womanizing hustler
Yeah,
who was
yeah,
so
he
sleazy
was-
and grimy,
yeah,
and he would sleep
yeah.
with all the female contestants when they were kicked off the show.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I didn't care. He could have been he could have been the janitor. He could have been like the actual janitor on set, and to work with you, I would have done anything too. So
She's
when
a legend.
she's a legend. So when I actually booked the role, when I actually booked the show, I was thrilled to be working with you. And it was one of, we were filming the pilot in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And
oh my God, that was nutbags.
oh gosh, it was wild.
Yeah.
And I was aware at the time that as cool as the script was and as cool, I was happy as I was to be there, it was visually very, very different than what we were told that it would be. It didn't represent at all what we saw in the short film in Sequin Race.
No, and like the other thing was that I was shooting. It was like the sort of amazing thing, but like the perfect storm of both Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce and Unreal shooting at the exact same time.
I remember.
So I'm up in Canada. They're having Sarah rewrite stuff on the fly and sending me pages, and I'm having to rewrite them in vans, and knowing that it's getting further and further away from what we intended. It's getting lifetimed.
It was lifetimified to
It was
the
getting
nth
lifetimed,
degree.
and I was like, this was the problem.
Yeah. That's
But
so
I was
funny.
like, oh, we're getting lifetime.
Yeah, it happened. It happened with the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So long story short, we shot being on that set because you were going back and forth to Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, but you did come down to Atlanta, and it was one of the first times that I had been on a set as an actor where it was the powers that be were female.
Yeah.
And it was a very safe and comfortable set for me to be. And although in the past when I had played straight, I was on a sci-fi show for a couple of years and I was playing straight, and I played straight many times. Although I preferred playing queer, I had learned that when I was playing straight, I really had to code switch, and I really had to hide the most precious parts of myself.
Your authentic self was really
but when the
like,
camera wasn't rolling, because it was just so obvious that I was making the producers or the directors or the male powers that be very uncomfortable. It was very jarring for them to see the difference between myself and the character I was playing. And so it was the first time.
Oh, by the way, fuck those guys.
Fuck those guys. Yeah, that's real. It was the first time that I was on a set where I felt like I was so comfortable and safe to be myself when the cameras weren't rolling. Little did I know that when the cut to a few months later, when the show got picked up, the same day the show got picked up, I was getting a phone call after phone call after phone call from all of my cast members telling me that they had just been fired, that they had all just been let go. And it was one after the next after the next. Yep. And it was over the course of many, many hours.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember calling my team and saying, like, what is going on?
It would have been good of us to give you a heads up. Just note to self that we were going to reshoot the whole thing.
Little did I know.
Yeah,
but you survived.
So 5 hours after I got the first phone call from my first cast member saying that they had been fired, I was literally on my knees in my apartment in Brooklyn in my underwear and a sweatshirt, like crying and praying, being like, I haven't gotten the call yet, but if it comes,
oh my God.
I was so confused as to what was going on because it was just so definitive with everybody else.
Yeah.
My phone rang and it was Marti and I remember seeing her number on my phone and picking it up, and the first thing I said to you was, regardless of whatever news you have to deliver to me, it's a dream come true to be getting a phone call from Marti and Megan.
Get out of here.
And you told me in that moment, you said, the show is picked up.
Yeah.
We're doing a whole revamp. We're doing a whole bunch of recasting, and we are, we love you. We love the version of you even more, that we met behind the scenes, even more so than the version of you that we saw on screen. And so we want to rewrite the character of Jay based after you.
Yeah.
I remember saying, what is that? She's like, well, we're making him gay. I was like, perfect, honey. That's all I need to know. That's all I need to know.
It's like,
first off,
it was such a, it was like dream come true based on, you know, stacked on dream come true, stacked on dream come true. It was so, it was just such a thrill. And it was so affirmative. It was so affirming to me, the power of authenticity and the power of being yourself in a way that I never had been behind the scenes on a TV show before, and how that paid off. And
I'm going to go back and watch it again.
Yeah.
You know, because I did watch it.
You
I
did
watch it.
Yeah.
It was just a while ago.
Sure.
But it holds up, and I know people who...
It's on Netflix now.
Yeah,
so
I see it all the
having this
time.
kind of, it's having
you
this
guys,
kind of
I see it.
It's having a renaissance.
I see it come up on my Netflix thing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And people who I talk to about you and say that was your show, everybody loves it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's just a really fun
However,
show. But
funny, because some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, like... it was Game of Thrones behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
It was
But kind of that's what
Yes,
the
it
show's
was.
about, too.
I know,
Sure.
that's what
It
was
was
so
life
funny,
imitating
though. It was
art.
like, and I contributed to that in part because I was drinking.
Oh,
and, I was performing. I was showing up. But I also was the kind of person who'd be like, oh, God, I'm back off the wagon.
Right. And just so our listeners
I'd
know,
hand people...
the show is called Unreal, and it's about a behind-the-scenes look at a fictionalized behind-the-scenes look at The Bachelor or dating shows like The Bachelor.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
And it was a brilliant premise and really fun. Really
Yeah,
fun.
I mean,
But,
and that was
you're a hot mess.
Sarah's, short film, and it was all about like, and I, but just as an aside, like I had, started drinking again like a year or so before that, and it was definitely like, what time is cocktail hour? You know what I mean? Like it kept getting a little bit earlier, and but I was also just like, I would hand people like a loaded gun because it was like a fight to the death. It turned into like, who's
Hunger Games.
the creator? Who's the creator?
Right, yeah.
And who's the person who's architecting this? And who's, and and then I sort of basically handed someone a loaded gun and said like, oh, I'm not sober right now. I'm pretty sure that was part
Sealed
of my,
the deal.
People. It just turned it all worse. And after all of that, I was like, I can't do this again. So I was there for season 1, and then I was like,
Peace
you
out.
know what? Because by that time I was sober, and I was like, this is too hard.
Understandably.
And everybody
Yeah.
was talented. The but it was like, that's just not, in general, I like to work that shit out.
Sure.
And for whatever reasons, we couldn't work it out.
Sure.
Sounds toxic. Sounds like a toxic workplace.
It's pretty rough.
It wasn't not toxic at times. That's real. But to be fair, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well. There's not. I think about this all the time because I have conversations with friends about it all the time. I've been acting for 20 years now. I don't think I can name a single project that I've been on where there hasn't been a certain level of toxicity or emotional abuse, psychological abuse, narcissistic abuse. I mean, it's kind of par for the course in this
It's
industry.
interesting though, because Dietland and to a great degree Girlfriends were not like that, because we just we set an intention, we manifested, and if there was somebody who was like really bad news, they left.
Beautiful.
We'd write them out of the show if we had to, because it was
Word.
like. But yes,
That's awesome.
Let's talk a little bit, because then we can talk about. You've both been in very similar situations, but show's called My Addiction, and we cast a pretty wide net. But when I talked to you, did you relate to this? Like, was there something you could talk about? Because obviously you're one of my favorite people, and I was just
Marti.
like, oh God.
Yeah.
And tell me your response, because it was so interesting.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was so intrigued as soon as I received your email telling me about what your new project was and what your new mission was. I could immediately relate to it, and I think that. What I had said to you was that I had lived a lifetime of being basically addicted to empathy impaired emotional abusers, to narcissists, and hadn't realized it until very, very recently. I literally went through last year, just over a year ago. No, this time last year, I went through an 8-week emotional abuse, narcissistic abuse coaching, like recovery program.
Wow.
Where do you find something like that? Because I'd like to
sign up
immediately.
Well, it's this extraordinary woman who's actually a Canadian woman named Tammy M. Joyce, and it was through the algorithm that it was brought to me.
Okay.
So I'll go through.
Okay.
I'm an open book. Any questions you have, anything you want to know, I'll gladly share with you. But essentially, this time last year, an ex-partner of mine revealed themselves to be a very abusive, toxic narcissist. And this was a year after I had already ended the relationship. But narcissists can be, it's a very insidious mindset, and they can be just master manipulators.
Yes.
And he was playing a long game, essentially, with the ideal end destination of just destroying me, of taking me down. And the final blow happened this time last year, and it just completely devastated me and was shocking to me, and was so brutal and was so specific to my wounds and my traumas in a way that it was unimaginable to me that anybody could do something so vicious and so cruel.
Are you comfortable telling us what?
Okay, so this is
I mean, I think for people to identify,
Sure.
obviously you don't have to, but
sure. Okay. Well, the only reason why I'm hesitant to share the specifics of it is because so I'm somebody who's a huge advocate of Brene Brown. I love her work. I love her work so much, and her focus on vulnerability and the power of vulnerability. I've done keynote speeches on the power of vulnerability and leading with an open heart, and like letting all of your your humanity be shown in order to give permission to somebody else to do the same. Yeah. And I think the thing that I have come to realize is that the dangerous part about that is that you are not safe to share your deepest vulnerabilities with everybody around you.
Which is exactly what we were just talking about, because I did that, at in the workplace, and I would be like, go ahead and, if you want to shoot me, this is a pretty good.
Correct. Yes.
And then of course I played right into it. And,
yes.
And in the end, it was really like my last drunk was on the Unreal Press tour.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I shot myself at that point.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
See, I wasn't aware of any of this.
Yeah.
Honestly.
No, I
hit it well.
Yeah.
I hit it well. But anyway, yes. Like, so it's sharing my deepest vulnerability at work so openly, especially in a context like that, was not safe. What was I doing?
Yeah.
Anyway, so you were saying
so
you have to be careful.
You have to be careful.
You have to be very, very mindful about who you do choose to share your vulnerabilities with, and to share your traumas with, and to share your wounds with.
Because it can be weaponized and used against you. Yeah.
And after going through this recovery program, I have now gained the ability and the skills to be able to recognize and identify who I'm safe with and who I'm not safe with.
Same.
And those were just not skills that I had before. I was so, my empathy was really, it was like, and my naivete was, it's a blessing in so many ways, and at the same time it can be your biggest weakness. When you're only seeing the world through the lens of empathy. It's unimaginable to you to think that anybody can operate without it. And so for so long in my life, I was just so perpetually confused by human behavior. I just didn't get it. I didn't get how people could behave in certain ways. It just never, it always baffled me. It never made sense to me. And I was always drawn to it because I always want to figure people out.
And it's familiar once you repeat those patterns.
Absolutely,
keep going.
So,
but I can relate to this because I believe that I am a victim of narcissist abuse. And it's so much of what you're saying resonates, right? Which is just the way it kind of then clouds the way you see other people and who you trust and who you feel safe with. You know, that I could let this person, really kind of fuck me up like that.
Yes.
And now I got to be careful about, it kind of takes your innocence away,
100%. 100%. And I think it's a mission of regaining that level of not necessarily innocence or naivete, but softness, because you really do build a hard shell around your heart. And it's a matter of, I've learned over the course of this past year, of not learning to to trust other people, but trusting myself and when my intuition is telling me, giving me all the warnings in the world and all the red flags and the red alarms are going off, like pay attention to it because it's your greatest superpower and it's your greatest gift, and it's always going to guide you onto a path of safety and your path of least resistance and guide you away from danger. Even if you don't know what that danger is, it's just you don't need to know why your intuition is telling you to go in this direction. It's like when you're listening to your GPS, like you don't argue with it when you don't know where you're going and you have an address in the GPS. If it's telling you to turn right, you turn right, right? Because it's I don't know where I'm going. I'm just gonna trust it. So anyway, long story short, the final act, his final blow was completed, and it was so devastating. And you know how our iPhones listen to us? They hear what's going on. So after about a week of conversations with friends and trying to figure it out, some video started to pop up on my algorithm on my YouTube, and it was this extraordinary. She's the leading psychologist in narcissistic abuse named Dr. Ramani Daravursala.
I actually have listened to her on Instagram.
She's brilliant.
Yeah, she pops up on my algorithm too.
So
believe it or not. She's fantastic.
This beautiful Indian woman who's like extraordinarily well versed on the spectrum of narcissism. However, what she was speaking about, the videos that were coming up for me specifically in my algorithm, she was speaking about like really grandiose, malignant narcissists, like the Donald Trumps, like the like the big bad bullies. And I could relate to that. I was like, well, that's my stepfather. That's my previous partner before this partner. The big bullies, the ones with huge egos and kind of like bulls in a china shop and just really have no regard for other people's well-being.
Initially,
correct.
Good love bombing, all that good stuff. But then, then the show starts.
Correct. Yeah. So that's really what she was focusing on. It tends to be where her focus lies as well. I think that's been her own personal experience. So that's her her lane of expertise. So as much as I could relate to it, I thought, well, this is interesting, but it doesn't apply to this specific situation.
Right.
And then as the algorithm does, it just keeps feeding you more and more information. And this redheaded woman came up on my YouTube named Tammy M. Joyce, and she has a program. She's a life coach, and she has a website, Tammy M Coaching, and she was speaking about narcissism in a way that I'd never heard before. She was speaking specifically about covert and vulnerable narcissists, people who don't present with this big bravado, with this huge ego. They very often play the victim. They play small. They can feign empathy in a way that the grandiose narcissists don't have the ability to. So it's like this false sense of security that you have with them. You feel like they're a safe space. You feel like you want to take care of them. They more often than not have a really devastating sob story about their origins and their childhood and their family of origins, which is legitimate and which is real, and that's something that we will get into as well. But
sounds like the sleeper narcissist.
Correct.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the woman on Grey's Anatomy who was pretending to have cancers and all this. And if you watch that documentary about her, initially, like her ability to fool people was that sort of like she's a victim. She's but also like really trying to be good to others, and then you just watch it to the point where you see what an abusive partner she is and how absolutely out of fucking mind. But how she could convince people for so long was, I'm sure, from being kind of so covert about it.
Absolutely, and it's a recipe for disaster for somebody with empathy. Like they know they target their victims very clearly.
Right.
And when they deliver these sob stories to people, and they see that you're there with them and that you're listening to them and that you genuinely care about their well-being and you feel for them and you want to care for them and you want to fix them and help them and heal them, and you're the perfect
target.
victim.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So when Tammy started speaking about this type of narcissist, and she really laid it out in a way that made that like everything in my life that had never made sense to me before. It was just like ding, 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 ding. All of these individuals, like narcissism it's a spectrum. It's from there's benign narcissists, people just who are kind of vain, kind of egotistical, but are harmless at the end of the day. May lack empathy a little bit, but aren't malicious, aren't out to get you specifically.
Right.
Not dangerous.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And then there's communal narcissists who are kind of like Donald Trump could be a communal narcissist. Like cult leaders are communal narcissists. People who are very charismatic. People who have the ability to draw people to them with.
I know someone like that.
Yeah, we all know. We all know somebody like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my stepfather is a communal narcissist.
Right.
An ex-partner of mine is a communal narcissist.
Yeah.
And then there's I think there's like 6 or 7 like specified types of narcissists.
And it can land anywhere like in between,
Correct.
just like
It's a
on
spectrum.
any spectrum.
Correct. Yeah. And then there's the covert narcissist, which is an extreme type of narcissist, and you wouldn't necessarily see it that way from the outside because they seem so harmless. But psychologists I've heard people refer to them as like the odorless gas of
oh my
narcissists.
God, they're the carbon monoxide.
Correct, because you don't see it. You do not see it coming, and you're living in this environment that's killing you. It's toxic, and you are dying from the inside out, and you cannot figure it out.
Are there red flags that you can, because that's dangerous, right?
I think I was in a relationship with one of those.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe
I mean,
all of them.
Sure. When you really break it down, it really starts to, and it can, like I said, in my own experience, when I really started to understand the spectrum of narcissism, it just really, like, my whole world was flipped upside down because, like I said, people didn't make sense to me before. I could not understand human behavior for the majority of my life, and then once you have an understanding as to what it is that you're dealing with and what it is that you're looking at, it's mind-blowing in many ways, and it really flipped my whole world upside down, but it gave me an opportunity to kind of recalibrate and
it makes total sense because you've always led with such an open heart, like you come just heart forward, right?
And that's something that I was trained into doing from a very young age.
Was that a survival?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of going all over the place, but I was adopted when I was a baby, and I was adopted by a majority white family and raised in a white town. I was the only black person, only person of color in my town, in my school, and
you're queer.
And I'm queer, and so therefore I couldn't blend in. I couldn't hide. So even if I, there was many closeted white kids that I grew up with, but they had the ability to physically blend in, so they weren't standing out to the degree where all eyes were on them. So so I was a target from a very young age. But in that, I recognized from a very, very young age that if I led with that open heart and that vulnerability and my humanity first, it was like it provided like people
will like you, and
even playing field for me to connect with you. Like, I'm just like you. I don't look like you. I don't I may not have the same biological predispositions as you, but I'm just like you. And so it was a muscle that I strengthened from a very, very young age. So I've had to learn how to, when and where it's appropriate to share those parts of myself, and when it's necessary to protect those parts of myself. So so when I discovered Tammy M. Joyce's coaching program, it changed my life. It changed my life because, like I said, I didn't understand. I didn't understand the relationships that I'd been in, the friendships I'd been in. I didn't understand the entertainment industry. I didn't understand certain members of my family, and all of a sudden, just put things in perspective. And the thing about narcissism is that there's a very clear formula to it. It's not just happenstance. You don't just end up a narcissist. It starts in childhood, and there's 2 very specific causes to narcissism. It's really the cause of it. The foundation of narcissism is lack of empathy.
Right.
That is caused by the limbic system, the emotional part of your brain, not developing properly, and that happens in childhood. So the limbic system really develops between the ages of 2 and 8 years old. And if at any point during that time of your, those formative years of your emotional brain developing, it's either that the child faces a tremendous amount of trauma. They like emotional abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse. If they're raised in an environment where they're raised by narcissists and they don't have empathy mirrored to them, modeled for them, they don't develop it. It's like it's a superpower as human beings. We all have it's all installed in our brain, but you have to press the button in order to get you have to build that muscle of empathy.
Right.
And so if it's not modeled to you, if it's not displayed to you as something,
that's sad.
It is really sad.
That's heartbreaking.
It is.
It kind of makes you feel bad for the narcissist.
Sure.
I mean,
which is part of the problem, right?
Correct. Which keeps
Some I don't
that
feel
cycle
bad
going.
For.
Yeah, which keeps that cycle going. And then the other side of it is if the child is treated as the golden child, they're put on a pedestal and you're so special. You're more special than any of the other kids.
Wow.
You're so beautiful. You're so talented. If the child is really praised for not who they are, but what they do, achievements. You know,
interesting.
That's another like surefire way to really fuck with your emotional brain and to learn to perform and to learn to.
Parents should understand this. I feel
correct.
like, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Don't treat the baby Jesus, like baby Jesus. You know,
little baby Jesus.
Well, that is a formula to eradicate the cycle of narcissism. Really, so. When that happens, and this doesn't happen to everybody, there are certain cases where people are raised by two narcissistic parents and you don't end up a narcissist.
Yeah.
It's, but generally speaking, it's that if you don't have that primary caregiver in some capacity, whether it's a parent, a grandparent, a nanny, a teacher, somebody who sees you and somebody who models empathy to you and kindness and love to you, then, that you can escape that formula or that life path, but unfortunately that's where it begins.
That's really fascinating. I always thought it was just like
born that way.
That it's sort of a genetic.
No,
right?
No.
I mean, not always, but sometimes when you meet someone who's so toxic, like the person you're talking about, or person you have talked about, you just think like, well, they just came from the dark side.
well, there is something to be said with that as well, because I said narcissism is a spectrum, and it goes into other destructive personality disorders like sociopathy and psychopathy, and all psychopaths and all sociopaths are narcissists, but not all narcissists are sociopaths and psychopaths.
Right.
So,
got it.
So it really does run the gambit.
So interesting. I've never heard any of this broken down in
Yeah.
that way.
So you essentially are or were in narcissistic personality disorder recovery addict. I mean, addicted to narcissists, but you are in recovery from that addiction. Isn't that wild?
Well, I was, having an understanding of it now, it's all I've ever known. I was my adopted father is a covert narcissist, is a vulnerable narcissist. I was raised very, very lucky. I have my mother, my adopted mother, who's my favorite person on the planet, and she's an empath, and she's like the kindest, most loving, caring, generous, beautiful human being on the planet. And thank God I had her. Thank God I had her, because she's a victim of narcissistic abuse as well.
Right, married to it.
Correct. Yeah. So she married my adopted father, and they were together for I think 15 years or something. But they divorced when I was 3 years old.
Oh wow! And then she married another one.
Then she married a communal narcissist, a bit of a more grandiose narcissist. Yeah. I mean, if you don't break that cycle, then you're just going to keep falling into the same karmic loop again and again and again. So my parents divorced when I was 3, and then she remarried my stepfather when I was 12.
Whoa.
But during that, the course of that 9 years, between 3 and 9 years old, she was my model for empathy. So I think again and again that, like, why? Because I've really had to break it down for myself. Like, why don't I have a narcissistic personality style? I've been around it my whole life. Why was I spared? And that was, to me, that really is the answer, because I had her as my safe space. And who knows what my life would have been like had I not.
You'd probably be president of the United States.
Maybe, yeah, exactly.
You'd be a little oranger.
That would be
so real.
That would be really. It would be good for us all. Actually,
that's so funny.
It's interesting because you're not drawn to that romantically.
Romantically, no, I'm not. I am not drawn to narcissists. But yeah.
Oh shoot! Lily is reminding us that. Jeffrey can't be the president because he's Canadian.
I'm Canadian born. I do have American citizenship as well.
So you could never tell.
Exactly.
For sure.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
no, I never.
Style.
I've dated just really, really, really nice guys.
Yeah,
like really sympathetic and
super nice
and very loving. My ex-husband couldn't be a nicer human being.
Lucky.
Canadian.
Oh,
My kids are Canadian.
Really?
Half Canadian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where's he from?
No, he's from Toronto.
Oh, okay. That's right. My father's from Toronto.
Yeah. So no, it hasn't been anything that I've tried that I've landed in romantically. But I landed big time in a relationship with somebody who was a friend for 15 years, 16 years, where I just didn't see it for what it was. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was drinking, and as we became closer and closer and working closer and closer together, it just got worse and worse and worse. And I kind of just went with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, let it roll off my back or participated in it too. The name calling and the making fun of would, kind of like join in about about myself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, that is true. I do look like that. I am old. I am. And would make it, sort of comedy.
Yeah.
But if you really break it down, that's abuse.
Oh, it's emotional abuse. It's psychological abuse.
1,000,000,000,000% disguised as humor for entertainment.
Correct.
But it's
Correct.
not.
Correct.
It's really fucked up.
Yes, it is.
And to add to that, a lot of other sort of manipulative, tactics.
Yeah.
It really messed me up, and it messed me up so much that I attribute a lot of my later in my drinking career drinking.
Yeah.
Right? So when it really ramped up towards the end, when I decided to pull the plug on the drinking, I think a lot of it had to do with that,
Absolutely.
with that abuse and how I was feeling, not about the person, but about myself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. And how this person made me feel about myself. And therefore, and that really, that turned into something really bad for me at the end.
And it was like watching, what do they say? Like, if you put a frog in cold water and you just, I don't know if this is true. It's
Sure.
But it was like, from the outside, it was like watching that, where you felt like the other thing I think narcissists can do is make you feel like you can't live without them.
Correct.
That they are.
Oh, that was
Correct.
100.
That level,
there was
like,
control.
Yeah.
Codependency, trauma bonding.
Well, it was also like, you can't go off on your own and do great things and earn money, or, you're always going to need me. You're going to need, me to give you or refer you or give you business. And you can't do that on your own. And therefore, because I respected and admired and deeply loved this person, like loved him, I then in turn believed that. I'm not good enough. I can't do this without you. It's really dangerous. And it's really, if you don't know, it's really sly.
Yeah,
it's very smooth.
It's insidious.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
so
it's
totally
it's
relate,
really twisted.
Especially with people who are comedians or comic. Like, I can relate to this from a couple of the jobs I've worked on, but primarily one, showrunner that I worked with. And so much of his disguise was that he was, bitingly funny.
Yeah.
Like, truly. And he was also an abuser and a sexual harasser. And, and the other part of it that was so interesting, and I've seen in other situations, not necessarily with me, is how they build you up and then they knock you down.
Correct.
Sure.
And they build you up
Correct.
and then they knock you down.
Yeah.
And you get into this thing where you're trying to get back in the good graces.
Sure.
And it's like
it's
like
it's
11
it's
seasons in
addictive.
one day.
It is addictive.
Right? You're like,
Yeah.
can I win their
11 seasons in one
favor?
day.
You're
right,
addicted to their approval.
Correct. Yeah. Well, they deliver the compliment with a slap.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And
Right.
So,
Yes.
And so it's just relationships in general become very complicated because you don't know, when you're conditioned to that, when you're conditioned to receiving that affection with abuse at the same time, you kind of lose yourself, and you lose the line between right and wrong, and between love and abuse, and between, it becomes all very convoluted and very complicated. And once you have an understanding of the formula, what makes a narcissist, and going through this program, like, it just made it very, very clear to me that the human brain, it's very predictable, and narcissists aren't complicated. They're
Simple beings.
They're very simple beings.
Yeah.
And it's actually shocking, even though it's a vast spectrum between benign narcissism and covert or grandiose malignant narcissism. It's like they've all read from the same playbook.
Yeah.
You have, once you can break it down and can see their patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
When you're meeting an individual out in the wild and you see people behaving in a certain type of way, once you begin to reverse engineer and kind of just go back to their childhood and break it down and have an understanding of what their formative experience was like, and you can make sense of it, and you can see how and why they are the way they are. And
then you can back up
that's
slowly.
That's it. It's not even. That's
slowly remove yourself from the situation.
That's the ideal outcome. And there's many situations where people have to learn to navigate around it for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But
or
going,
children, when you have children with
when
somebody,
you're co-parenting with a narcissist,
that
absolutely,
seems
it's
real
nightmarish.
difficult.
Yeah. But like any addiction, the best solution is to, I guess, in in the world of narcissism, it's to go no contact is the term that's used, is abstinence. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's removing yourself from the situation entirely, and that's
what I did. Yeah.
I have as well, and it's been really. This is coming from somebody who has dealt with substance abuse and disordered eating. It's really jarring to your sense of self, because all of a sudden I realize like I've been surrounded by narcissists and narcissistically abusive and emotionally abusive people and legitimate sociopaths my entire life. Yeah. And without that, who are you?
I? Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah.
You know, it's been very destabilizing, and this past year has been the most, without question, the most transformative year of my life and the most challenging year of my life because of all of that. Because I've gone no contact with people who I. Like you were saying about the individuals, people that I really loved. People that I really, really loved and really cared about.
I quit drinking right at probably the moment that I decided that I needed to get away from this person, and I had to do it carefully. You know, other friends were attached to this person, and so you know, it was when I decided that I wasn't going to let this person control me anymore. That's when the teeth came out and the black eyes.
Correct.
And what do you mean I can't? What do you mean I can't control you anymore?
Yeah, the
real person came out. That was like as soon as I started backing away, and I'm going to do what I want to do, and you can't control me. That's when I saw the behind the curtain of the narcissist.
The mask slipped.
Yeah, but I quit drinking.
Yeah.
Almost the day or the week that I decided I need to get away from this person somehow. I need to sort of start getting myself, pack the bags, the emotional bags, and get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
So this year and a half that I've been sober and I've been away from him has been the biggest year of change, right? And I have been, there are moments where you're like, oh my God, that's been such a big part of my life. Yeah. Who am I without this person in that world? And I'll tell you who I am. I'm a lot fucking calmer and a lot more peaceful. And everything's just a lot nicer and easier, which you just don't really anticipate. You don't know what to anticipate when you've been controlled by a narcissist.
Well, especially someone who's vengeful. And someone who, in certain cases, can, make other people leave your life too.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. The flying monkeys. They have the
monkeys.
enablers around them. It's all in our. It's in our culture everywhere. It's in every greatest story that's ever been told. It's every villain in every fairy tale that you ever see. Like the wicked witches and the what is the
support team?
Snow White? Yeah, for real though. Like it's everywhere. I think back to my favorite movie when I was a child was Labyrinth, and when you look with David Bowie, and when you look at that dynamic between Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie in that movie, that's the story of the empath and the narcissist.
Right, right.
To go back to what you were saying about when the mask was revealed or the curtain was pulled back.
Yeah,
and
the fangs came
and
out.
the black eyes. You say that's an actual thing with narcissism,
so
where they're predators.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So when they are focused in on something,
his
like any animal
black.
in the wild, the pupils get massive, and they literally have black eyes. It's fucking wild.
Terrifying.
When you're in argument with a narcissist. You can see it happen once you have an understanding, like I said, of the formula that they're, the rule book that they're playing by and how they operate. It's all so unbelievably predictable and it's so easily identifiable and it's fucking terrifying.
Terrifying.
It really is.
Yeah. And their eyes do go black. I mean, it's like
legit.
I've watched it happen, and it's like
it's inhuman.
You just turned in front of me. You just turned into.
Because in those moments you're threatening their very sense of self and their well-being because it's all a mask, it's all a facade.
You see
and
them.
once they know that you see them, then it's over.
It's over.
Yeah, that's certainly what happened with the showrunner I was working with. I mean, but the interesting thing in that case was he became sort of afraid of me.
Yes, exactly. They're cowards.
Yeah, because I sort of spoke out in a public forum and, backed up someone else who had said, some stuff about him. And I was afraid. I was terrified when I go into public spaces until I realized that he was afraid of me.
Correct.
And I was like, because he knew I would speak the truth, So it was like, and he knew that I knew stuff that other people didn't know, right? Because when you finally do speak the truth, people come to you with their stories and they go, "Did you know this?" And you're like, "Holy shit!"
Yes, yeah. which
I
makes
had
it even
no
more,
idea.
which makes it even more twisted.
Yeah, and
terrifying. Like what you were saying, Megan, about control. Like it's all about control, and
Yeah.
they've always been terrified of you, and they're
Yeah.
all just scared little babies, and they're all truly, and
And
it's all their whole life is a facade.
And is it true that I've read too, and you have more experience with this, that they do seek out smart,
absolutely,
really great people?
Sure, yeah, very like
obviously.
Yeah. I mean, they essentially are drawn to the personality or the characteristics that they lack themselves and that they so desperately want, and they put you on a pedestal at first because they idolize you and they see you as this like this godlike figure because they're
a beautiful soul.
Yeah, because they don't have it in themselves, so it's like almost
Yeah.
it's like unimaginable to them that this thing can exist, and then after a while they tear you down for it. They become very, very resentful, and that's when things really start to turn. But earlier in the conversation when I had said that when things really revealed themselves with my former partner, and you asked what were some signs or some things, what were some red flags? Lack of empathy was big.
That is
It was really big in a way that it didn't make sense to me at the time, obviously, but I remember feeling like I cared so much about this individual's feelings. I cared so much about their feelings, and I remember saying to him again and again throughout our relationship, like, it feels like you don't care about my feelings. And it just I couldn't but I thought
couldn't comprehend
I couldn't comprehend it because I'm like, well, that can't possibly be true. You're just not you're just behaving like you don't care about my feelings.
You're not
you
using
care
your
about my
voice.
feelings. Yeah, exactly.
It must be
Exactly.
some like we could work on it psychologically because
Exactly.
you've got some like you start to try to problem fix. Like
Sure.
in my experience with people like this, I try to, I'm trying all these different like coping things. And as you said, like I've learned in, other working situations that, sometimes there is no way out. And in that situation, I think, especially if it's a working situation where you can't leave, the strategy then has to be like, how do I take care of myself in this situation and keep a sense of reality? Like this person isn't actually reflecting the world as it is.
Sure,
right?
It's delusion.
Right.
However, they're seeing the world around them. It's delusional, and once you realize that as well, that they're living in a complete fantasy world, it's just it's shocking in unimaginable ways, especially because you think that you know this person and you think that you're so close with them and you have such an intimate dynamic with them, and then you realize that the way that you see this relationship or see the world around you is not how they are seeing this relationship or the world around you. It's like lack of boundaries is another big one, another big red flag. And the dangerous part about that situation for me was that I was emulating my relationships with my fathers, with my adopted father and my stepfather.
God damn it! It's so often the dad thing.
It's so Freudian. It's just
mom
so
or dad.
exactly, yeah.
Mom's
always,
dad.
Yeah.
boils
But
back down.
I was so drawn to the types of male relationships that I was raised with, and I thought, like the subconscious part of me just wanted to fix that and wanted to get it right this time, and so I was drawn to that dynamic and that energy, that masculine energy again and again and again.
It's interesting because like I've done such a shit ton of therapy because I got sick with anorexia when I was 13. So and then all through, but. And when I finally went to this addiction specialist who started me back on the path of, my current sobriety, she wanted to talk about my dad and my mom again. And I was just like, it's the story old as time. Like, I'm so bored of telling the story. And, and I had, I think, been around some narcissistic people who said, like, you've already said that. Like, you've already had that revelation. And I was like, I hate being like a 50-year-old woman with daddy issues. Like, it's not appealing. It's not cute. But the reality was there was so much more to uncover. And there's like, there's one thing to know it. And then there's the other, you peel the onion, and then there's a level of feeling that you've never felt. And then you peel the onion again, and there's a level of feeling you've never felt. And you have to like go to the point where you're like, oh, there it is.
Yes.
Like there's the core of this pain. And then, once I kind of walked through that fear of like feeling it, that's when I started to feel like I could forgive some of the people that had hurt me, And I think that's the funny thing is a lot of people, I think are afraid of doing that healing work. Like you did this incredible healing work.
It's terrifying.
It's so hard.
To look at the truth of who you are and your own patterns and your own shit and the poor choices that you have made and your addictions and your bad behavior and you know, and like how you've treated other people, how you've treated yourself, how you've neglected yourself.
Yep.
It all goes back to the inner child work, and that was a huge part of the recovery program of.
And I found that embarrassing. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to
and so
hold
annoying.
a teddy bear
and so
like
cheesy inner child work. Ugh.
Little Marty.
I thought it was so corny.
It feels
and guess
cliche,
what? Yeah, it
right?
does feel cliche.
Yeah.
And yet, it was the one thing that out of all the years of therapy that I'd done, it was the one thing I had avoided because I was so judgmental. I was so judgmental.
Like, oh boy, you know,
inner child work.
Little Marty wants an easy bake oven.
Exactly.
Whatever.
But guess what? She needs it. That little girl inside of you does need that easy bake oven.
Let's
does
get
need
you
someone.
Marty.
Yeah, it does need someone to bake her cookies with love and with and like be patient with you and let you lick the spoon and
Maybe that's why my algorithm is this cake and your guys is
right.
Sure. That's oh my God. My algorithm is all. I always say it's from the neck up. It's like it's psychology, spirituality, and dermatology.
So is mine.
That's all.
So is mine.
That's all it is.
Jeffrey, are you single or are you partnered up?
Oh,
you
gosh,
are?
No, I'm single. Yeah, I've been single for the past 2 years since I broke up with
a really cute guy.
Is he a narcissist?
I haven't stopped thinking about him with you.
Really?
Thinking of the
yes.
same person?
That's really funny.
He's really hot.
You know what's really funny is that legit, like, you know this. I just got back from South Africa. I was there for like 2.5 months. But coming back, I just got back 10 days ago.
Yeah.
And it's the first time in 2 years where I'm like, yeah, I think I'm open to the possibility of dating because of everything that I've experienced this past year and going through the coaching program and the recovery program. Like I said, I learned that it's not about trusting other people because people are going to disappoint you or they're going to let you down and people are messy. And there's a lot of really damaged individuals out there. And in major cities like New York and Los Angeles and Cape Town and London and where we find ourselves for work, it's a hub for narcissists. Yeah. It's a hub for sociopaths and psychopaths and they're everywhere.
It's almost a prerequisite. Like, come on the state line. Let me talk to you.
Correct.
Let's see your narcissist card.
Exactly.
You may pass.
But once you understand the formula and once you've done enough inner child work and and have done the recovery work yourself, you learn to trust yourself. You learn to really listen to your intuition, to trust it, and trust it always is going to have your best interest in mind. And it's gotten to the point now where when I meet any given individual, my intuition tells me right away if I'm safe or not. Yeah. And if it says no, I believe it. Yeah. And I turn around and walk away. And it's been being in Cape Town was really interesting for me because it's a different level of narcissism. It's everywhere, and unfortunately, it kind of runs. Yeah. And
what were you doing there?
So I was there working on a project, and I'm not allowed to talk about it. But I was also there. It was something that came up when I was there, but I was there primarily on a modeling contract, which is like. I know, something that I didn't think that I would go back to, but it was
gorgeous.
Thank you.
So I can see.
And the dermatology is working. Yeah.
Okay, well this is. I'm going.
We could do another episode.
I'm going
about
all
skincare.
over the. I'm going all over the place.
Yes.
Well, skincare. The reason why it was something that was that I've been so focused on over the past year or so. It's because with emotional abuse or narcissistic abuse, it can manifest, that toxicity within you can manifest in all sorts of ways. And going back to my childhood, when I was raised in a through my teen years in a household with a really abusive narcissist, not only did I develop a really sad and debilitating and isolating eating disorder at 15 years old, when I first started modeling actually, and substance abuse issues, alcohol abuse issues, marijuana, anything I could get my hands on,
anything
just to numb
takes you out of
numb out.
Yeah, and I didn't understand it at the point. And once again, now that I've done this coaching program, I understand it. Like, oh, that's why you were numbing out because you were in constant pain. Yeah, but
that'll do it.
Yeah. But through my even before the eating disorder presented itself and manifested within myself, I was just sick all of the time. My immune system was totally shot because my cortisol levels were so high. I was sick all the time. And then in my first really abusive relationship with a narcissist, I would get cold sores all the time, like monthly, because and with no real rhyme or reason to it. I wasn't actually sick, but my cortisol levels were just so extreme in my system. And then in the last relationship that I was in, I had crazy cystic acne that just made no sense. My doctors could not figure it out. My dermatologist couldn't figure it out. I eliminated everything. I spent so much money on blood panels and just going through the process of.
And you're like, this is the moneymaker.
Yeah. And it was
been so hard.
It was brutal only because Well, it was brutal for many, many reasons. And I think that being in an industry where it is the money maker and where this really, you do find your worth and value.
No!
The hardest part about it sounds silly, but is that as I get older, when I get acne now, I get hyperpigmentation. So it leaves really dark marks on your skin.
Right, yeah, yep.
You know?
Yeah.
But, okay, so I know I'm going all over the place. This is the way my brain works.
Around.
Lily's shaking her head with delight. Meaning,
okay.
But
so,
we may have to do episode 2, just talk about addiction to like skincare.
Oh, let's do it.
Yeah.
Obsessed. Oh my gosh, I am the king of skincare.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with skincare.
Yeah.
But when I was in this last relationship with this covert narcissist, and I went through some really brutal professional downfalls with working with a really, really abusive narcissistic producers on a couple of different TV shows. Lillian knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I got unreeled. I basically got I was
unreeled.
Completely.
Yeah.
I was the host and the judge of a reality competition TV program, and I had been doing it on. I'd been hosting and guest judging on RuPaul's Drag Race for years, and loved it. And then they asked me to go and do the first franchise without RuPaul and to host and judge the first season of Canada's Drag Race.
Yeah.
And
one of Lily's favorite seasons of all time,
yeah,
by
exactly.
the way.
In her top 3, apparently.
Top 3.
It was a really, really fun experience. However, I went in with a really false sense of security. I went in feeling like I because I've been doing it for so many years.
Yeah.
Exactly. However, it's like I equate it to like a McDonald's franchise. Like you work at one McDonald's, you love the crew, you love the customers, you love everyone, you're very familiar, and then they promote you to manager at this other location, and you go in, and it's a completely different situation. It's a completely different story. So, unfortunately, the producers on Canada's Drag Race were deeply narcissistic and very vengeful.
I didn't know they have those in Canada.
They sure do. They're all over the world.
I don't think they grew them there. Right?
Yeah, they do. They're all over the world.
Yeah,
but I made the mistake of I should have known better after playing a shady producer on a reality show for so many years. Essentially don't do or say anything on camera that you don't want them to use against you.
Right.
You know? So
right.
Anyway, so I had gone through I learned that the hard way. I learned that the very, very hard way. On RuPaul's Drag Race, you kind of have the freedom just to say what you want and don't say what you don't. You know, on Canada's Drag Race, we were given earpieces where, regardless of whether or not you had anything negative to say, that you were forced to say something negative. And you're just giving us options.
Yes.
You're just so you can give a compliment and you can give a negative critique.
Are you kidding me?
No. So it was just
you were being fed mean shit. And that's so not you.
No. It wasn't. But it was to be fair, it was all of us on the panel. We were all
singled out.
No, we were all in the same position, but then they ultimately decided to use the edit, and whichever way they chose to use the edit.
Sure.
So and that anyway, so the fans were not happy, and it was during COVID, and it was just receiving an onslaught of like hundreds of thousands of people. That it's your own community, like young queer kids, and they're just coming for you so hard. It was really hard, and it was devastating. So at that time, I gained a lot of weight for the first time in my life. This goes back to what we were talking about with dermatology and how hard it was, the moneymaker thing. And it ended up being something really beautiful and beneficial. I gained weight for the first time in my life. I just ate my feelings and had gained about 30 or 35 pounds during the pandemic. And I have such body dysmorphia, I didn't really see it in myself. I wasn't even really aware. I'm like, oh, my clothes are shrinking. Yeah. That's weird. Yeah. What is wrong with my dryer? That's what is going on?
In that direction too.
I absolutely I still do. I can't see it
Right.
clearly, like good or bad. I can't. I just can't. I don't have the ability to see myself clearly. So I ultimately left that show and went and did a Disney show for 2 years instead. I was offered to go do season 2 of Canada's Drag Race, and I said no. I was up for. So I went and did the reboot of Doogie Howser in Hawaii for 2 years instead, and it was really, really fun, and it was so freeing because I was playing such a fun, loose, comedic character, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing a character where my looks mattered at all. It just wasn't a focus at all, and I feel like having that freedom within myself to be a little bit chubbier and to be a little bit looser and a little goofier.
I ran into you during that time, and your idea of chubbier, but anyway.
You did run into me at that time. That's
God,
true.
You looked amazing.
We were hiking. That's so fun.
You looked amazing.
Thank you very much. That's very kind
But I
of
mean,
you.
that really, again, speaks to, and we got to do another episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you have disordered eating, when you're in that space, I mean, it's like I am for all intents and purposes in, recovery. But man, it comes up as soon as I feel a lack of control.
Sure does.
And I get, fortunately, I get called on it by some people in my life,
Thankfully,
who
I'm
say
glad you
like,
have that.
oh, you're looking, because it's, once you're past a certain age, it's your ass or your face.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. That's so real. Well, it's something that I had to bring up to my mom talking about South Africa when I went back and was going on a modeling contract and knew that I was going to be, looked at in a way and kind of like idolized in a way that I hadn't been since for a decade.
Yeah.
I knew that could be easily triggered within myself. So my mom was my accountability buddy. I had her check in on me and ask me, I begged her before I left, was crying on the phone with her. I was like, can you please? I was afraid to do it on my own.
Yeah.
I was afraid to. It was the first time that I would be going back to modeling, not being severely anorexic and not smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I can do this.
And you were also just post this relationship, is that correct?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Holy shnikes.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was all a lot. But the really beautiful thing that came out of it, like I said, is that I recognized when I gained the weight and I realized my worth is not in my weight.
Right. The world didn't fall apart.
Nope.
I got a bunch of acne. I had dark spots all over my face, and my whole world wasn't devastated. Nope. I was still I'm still me. The essence of me is still me, regardless of what I look like on the outside. So there's correct. Yeah. So that was it was a big learning curve. It took me a long time to get there, and I don't think that I wouldn't have wished it upon myself, and I don't think I would have ever thought I could survive it had it just been presented to me as like a possibility.
Yeah.
But having gone through it, I'm so unbelievably grateful that I did. I realized that everything you want is on the other side of fear. I've loved that quote for so many years, and it's like
I need to learn a little bit of that.
Yeah. And that goes into codependency and trauma bonding with narcissists and making the choice to walk away from some of the closest relationships in my life, some of the closest friendships and family members, and I was so afraid to be without those individuals because once again I didn't know who I would be without it. I was so afraid, and everything, the truth of who I am is on the other side of everything that I was most afraid of. I feel as shocking as it was to me a year ago when I first discovered the spectrum of narcissism, what was most shocking, there's two things that were most shocking to me. One, that I'd lived my entire life without having any awareness or understanding of it whatsoever. And
why would you? Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing. It was also shocking to me how uninformed mental health professionals are in terms of destructive personalities and narcissistic personality styles as well.
That's really interesting. Yeah,
I was in my first deeply narcissistic relationship. I was in couples therapy for years with an amazing couples counselor, amazing couples therapist. She's brilliant on so many levels. She actually said about a year into one of our sessions, when I had told something that had some really abusive, fucked up shit that had occurred in the days prior, she looked at me and she looked at him and she said, "Well, Jeffrey, it sounds like you're in an emotionally abusive relationship." And it was shocking to me in that moment. And I remember looking over at him, and he had such shame in his eyes. I remember thinking, "You motherfucker, you knew, you knew." And then my brain goes to, "Oh my God! I feel so bad. Oh, let me help you." He feels bad about it. Oh, he knows he can't help it. He feels bad, right? So, as helpful as it was hearing those words in that moment, you're in an emotionally abusive relationship. We continue to go to her for the next year and a half.
Yeah.
If she had the understanding of narcissism, and this is I think a lot of people struggle with this, and I struggled with it at first, having this understanding, because you don't want to just give up on people. You don't want to think that some human beings are just lost causes.
Sure. Yeah.
The reality is with narcissism is that it is a form of brain damage. When your emotional brain doesn't develop in childhood, you don't develop empathy, it's not something that can be taught in adulthood.
No,
it can't.
They don't get better.
They don't get better.
No.
They do not change.
No.
And it's really
that's for sure.
To come to terms with that, it really I think it helped me tremendously, and I think that it will help a lot of other people as well, understanding that just because I have the capacity to change, I have the capacity to self-reflect, to be accountable, to recognize my own patterns of behaviors and where I have gone wrong, how I've hurt people, the poor choices that I have made, and to be able to rectify that and to be able to heal that and be able to change my ways of being and having a certain level of empathy and recognizing that I would never want to make somebody else feel this way again. I made this mistake once. I'm never going to do it again. They don't have that ability. So to it's been very, very heartening over this past year to see that as I have learned more and more about narcissism, to see that it's becoming like a hotter word in the zeitgeist. People are understanding in a way that they didn't understand it before, including mental health professionals. One of my one of my closest friends in Vancouver is a social worker and a counselor and has worked with like unhoused youth specifically for decades. And I remember when all this was going down for me, she didn't have an understanding of narcissism. You know, it's like when you talk to a doctor and you realize that they spent like 40 minutes on women's health and their 8 years of medical training. You know, it's like when you talk to psychologists, like they spend like a fraction of time on destructive personalities and narcissism specifically.
Well, and I think that it's not true in the current situation I am with Dr. Al. But I think a lot of people either see it it's very binary. It's this and it looks like this. But what you're talking about is the spectrum in different kinds. Correct. And I think that is what people have been like. I think most people, it's kind of been like, oh, they're a narcissist,
Right.
What a narcissist.
Blanket diagnosis.
But what's fascinating to hear from you is all these different types, because then I can be like, oh, it's that
flavor of narcissism today.
Like I was thinking as you were talking, like I was in couples therapy with someone who I just felt like won therapy all the time. They were just better at it than I was, and the whole thing where you're trying to like sort of win couples therapy, like who's the person who's more insightful and really the right most of the time. Competitive couples therapy. Well, you want your therapist to love you.
I mean, I hadn't seen my therapist. Sorry, I hadn't seen my therapist in like 4 years, and I went to see him and paid him a lot of money just to tell him I'm sober now.
I'm doing great.
Aren't you proud of me?
Hug me?
Are you proud of me? Remember how fucking fucked up I was and what a drunk?
$400 later.
Sober. Hallelujah. Hand to God. Just want to show off.
Oh, I've done some more things with therapists. I'll be the first to admit it.
Yeah. I'm healed.
No, I hear everything you're saying, and this is something that I had to really come to terms with myself. And over this past year of like rediscovering who I am without this addiction to destructive personalities in my life, it's really, really easy and really addictive to be around messy people because it makes you feel like you got your shit together.
Right.
I realized once I like kind of let go of all these really messy, fucked up narcissistic people, I'm like, oh, I am not as together as I deluded myself into believing that I am.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, that is probably one of my primary character defaults is that I will like look at an inventory and I'll be like, well, I don't have any part in this. I'm just like, well, I don't know what you're, like I have to really, like. Yes, you have to sort of get yourself out of these relationships where the other person is messier. I've always said like a lot of my romantic relationships have been people who are like milk carton people, like they have a date of expiration. You know what I mean? And I know,
wow, very telling.
Well, I know that I have a way out.
Yeah.
And the way out is that this person is narcissistic, or, whatever it is that in that was a sort of form of safety for me, right? And so that's definitely not something that it's definitely problematic, if you're looking at someone as a project that you can't ultimately fix.
Yes.
But that's comfortable.
It sure
because then I know I'm not trapped, right?
Sure.
On some level, I'm like, well, I'm also going to hold the cards because I'm more functional than you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? All this stuff where I went, oh, wait a minute, I'm setting people up. And I also do this thing where I come on first as exactly who you want me to be. Like I am, I want to, I want to be the best version of me that you want, right?
And then eventually get to know you.
Well, or I get so sick of it that I start resenting the other person for making me do that.
Right.
They did not ask me to do that. I did that in the first place. And then I'm like, wait, what are you so codependent? Like, why are you acting this way? And I'm like, oh, because I've been setting you up. So looking at all that stuff, but
You gotta get really real with yourself.
Yeah, you gotta get really real. And then, so as a result, I was celibate for 8 years.
And I remember you telling me that when we were emailing a couple weeks ago as well. And I understand that in the same way that, that I... When I got back from Cape Town, I told you that my dog, Constance Zimmer, was taking care of my dog. Yeah. While I was gone for 2.5 months, and one of the first, when I went and picked her up, one of the first things she was asking about was like, you're around all these hot models and were you like sleeping around left, right, and center? And my answer was like, no, I wasn't. And it's like, and it's because I'm not easily fooled by a pretty face anymore. A pretty face means nothing to me at this point.
I'm going to set you up with has a pretty face,
wonderful,
and a pretty body,
and do they have empathy? Yes. And do they have the ability to self-reflect? And can they be accountable for their own behaviors? And oh no!
I mean, we might
have we had to pause on that one. Because that's what I'm looking for at this point.
I will show you a picture.
Coming back to Los Angeles has been very,
oh
very
my God,
interesting.
it must be because it's
been very jarring because it really the city really is a magnet for narcissistic people with destructive narcissistic personality styles, and it's the first time that I've come. We travel for work all the time. We go all over the world for work all of the time. Every other time I felt so excited to be here, so thrilled to come back. And it's the first time that I'm seeing it in a new light. It's the first time that I'm seeing it
fresh eyes.
With fresh eyes. Once you have an understanding of narcissistic abuse and you want to remove yourself from destructive individuals, you realize the energy of all of those individuals compiled into one is the energy of Los Angeles. And is that something that I want to is that something I want to continue to steep myself in, or do I want to navigate away from it in some capacity?
How's San Luis Obispo? Yeah. Because that's real pretty.
Yeah, it sounds great.
Yeah, it's not too far. You can get to LA, an hour and a half.
That's so real.
Yeah. Lily's saying we can wrap it up.
We can wrap it up. Wow.
Holy shnikes.
Holy Jeffrey Bowyer-Chapman of it all.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, we had a lot to talk about. So I think we're going to do another episode. There'll be a part 2 of this one because
there was just so much to talk to him about. Yeah, there were a lot of levels to get to, and there was no way we were going to do this in one episode.
Nope.
So, bonus episode with Jeffrey
and I think there's kind of 2 very, different conversations.
Absolutely.
We were having, one conversation in this first episode about it'll be about,
addiction to personality types.
like narcissistic personality disorder, which all of the spectrums of that, and then we started to talk about his
channeling
experience, his experience as a medium, and so you can sign on for that one, which is
after this one.
Fascinating story of his change and growth.
Yeah.
Through clearing out those mental and emotional channels.
Yeah, he said he cleared the pathways.
Yeah.
And that opened him up to this thing that he's always had.
Yeah.
And I do believe people who have gifts like he has do have them from childhood.
Yeah.
And it's just about how to access them and to use them for good.
Well, and spoiler alert, this one's seen ghosts, so.
I have seen ghosts.
Yeah.
I see dead people.
Yeah.
I do. Legitimately.
Yeah. No.
So we'll get into that.
Yeah. Welcome to my addiction.
But he is a doll, and I just want to gobble him up.
I know, right? Radiant.
I just want to take him with me everywhere.
Person. Maybe he's our new obsession. Okay, so let's play our game real quick.
Okay.
We're not calling it addiction anymore. We're calling it what's your obsession of the week? What's your what have you been unable to
just stop
talking about?
Moving. Relocating. Yes.
What?
I've been fantasizing about getting out of Los Angeles.
What?
But
you brought up San Luis Obispo.
Yeah, because I've been looking at San Luis Obispo, San Juan Capistrano.
Oh, it has to have a sand. It has to have a sand.
It's got to be a 3-namer.
Wait, what? How did this start?
It's literally fantasy.
Okay.
But maybe sometime in the future.
You just finished your house. You literally
the house is big. The house might be too big.
Oh yeah.
This is just like I go on to the Find Home Zillow.
Oh, 100%.
And I just look at areas that I think are sleepy and by the ocean And
you'll go crazy there.
It's fun. I will be lonely.
You be next
I
to
will
the
get
ocean.
bored.
I spent a little bit of time by the ocean by myself, and it got really lonely.
But anyway, that's like the whole fantasy of moving away.
100%.
What's your obsession? Your addiction?
Probably talking about the White Lotus finale.
Okay.
So, spoilers for anybody who wants to dip out at this point. I just feel like there was so much foreplay. We've already talked about White Lotus.
Yeah.
But clearly I'm still obsessed. Like, I feel like it was so much foreplay.
Yeah.
Like, so much. And then...
Not a big climax.
Well, it was a pretty big climax.
Yeah.
I mean... yes, it was edging. We were
edging
edgelord season
yes.
of White Lotus. And then the end. Mike White said it. Lily was telling us that Mike said it was. They were edging
the whole season.
Okay, well that's a bit of a. Rationalization,
yes.
if you ask me.
By the way, everybody, that's sexual terminology.
Yeah. What?
Right?
You don't.
No, I said it's sexual terminology.
Oh, I thought you were asking if it was sexual terminology.
No, I know what edging is.
Okay.
All the kids know.
It's in like dating profiles now. You can put that you're into edging.
Oh, for the love of God.
I don't know. Brag a lot?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we should sign off. Oh, wait.
Socials.
What are your
where can
socials?
you find
what
us?
are our socials?
We are at My
We're
Addiction
Edgelord.
Edging. At edging. Sorry, Lily. We're not. It's at My Addiction Pod.
Everywhere.
We'll see you on the next one.
See you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to My Addiction. As a reminder, this podcast is meant for entertainment. We are not medical practitioners, and anything on the podcast does not constitute medical advice or treatment. Please consult your own medical professionals at all times. My Addiction is a Tiny Pyro production. It was created and hosted by Marti and Megan Weaver. It is produced by Marti, Megan Weaver, Maria Grasso, and Lillian Holman. It is edited by Lillian Holman. Our graphics were designed by Lane Bynum. Our social media is managed by Aziza Abou-Boutain and Ashley Lindsay. Special thanks to Allison Shano, Rebecca Steinberg, Amy Gregonis, and Melissa Tavarit.